Ready? Here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Topeka City Council meeting will come to order. As you can tell, Mayor De La Isla is out of town this evening, and so once again, you're stuck with me. So we're going to have some fun here and try to get through this agenda as quickly as we can. So with that, I will call on my esteemed colleague from District 6 for the invocation he's missing. Well then, that's a joke, people. Come on. We're not starting this off well. Here we go. If you all would rise for the invocation, it would be my pleasure to introduce Dr. Terry Kitson from the Central Church of Christ. He serves as the senior minister for the Central Church of Christ, located in beautiful College Hill. The church began with two families meeting in a home on February 21st, 1909. The Central Church of Christ has met at the current location at the corner of College and Huntoon since 1938. The church has a history of helping other congregations start or revive in Topeka and Northeast Kansas. It has a vibrant student ministry for children and youth. One of their newest ministries is called Friends Speak. Friends Speak provides those who speak English as a second language an opportunity to practice their conversational English. The congregation is currently partnering with the International House at Washburn University through Friends Speak. Dr. Kitson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, tonight we seek your richest blessings on this community we call home. We seek your blessings on each council member and our mayor as they lead and serve our city. Tonight they have gathered to make appointments, to make decisions, and to discuss our community. May you give this body of servants wisdom as they approach each of these decisions and make each of these appointments. Impart on them the ability to consider every member of this city, regardless of race, economic status, gender, or religion, in making these decisions. Father, may you grant this body a spirit of unity as they deliberate. And Father, I also ask that you cause a spirit of love and peace to prevail in our city. And I ask you to protect our city from hate and violence. And may your will be done in this community as your will is carried out in heaven. And Father, we would be amiss tonight if we do not also pray for a sister city in California, the city of Paradise. And we pray, Father, that you will be with their mayor and their city council as they have all lost their homes. And we pray, Father, that you might be with them as they rebuild. I offer this prayer in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Kitson. That was excellent. There are two proclamations this evening. If the folks from WIBW would join me up front. "65 years.
We look pretty good, don't we? That's together.
So what's funny to me is I can't remember a time without television. I'm just too young, as I would expect the vast majority of folks in here, and almost no one here can remember Topeka without WIBW. You guys have been part of our community for so long, and we're incredibly honored to have you all here. So with that, I will read this proclamation. Whereas WIBW Television's first broadcast of a television signal on November 15th, 1953, becoming the second television station in the state of Kansas, and WIBW serves a 17-county area with broadcast signal potential to reach 400,000 Kansans. And 13 News has been honored with numerous awards for reporting of important events in Topeka, Shawnee County, and all of Northeast Kansas. And, as if they haven't done enough for our community already, November 15th, 2018 celebrates the 65th anniversary of WIBW Television. So therefore, on the behalf of Michelle De La Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, I do hereby proclaim November 15th, 2018 as WIBW TV Channel 13 Day. Would you like to say some comments?
Would you like to go first, Roger, since you're in charge? Well, I think on behalf of all of us, it's hard to believe how time flies. I started at WIBW when I was about 10. And I've been here 22 years now, and if you haven't had a chance, you can go on to WIBW.com and share some of the memories in our 13 at 65 series, so you can relive some of the oldies but goodies and some of the things that have happened in the community. But I know that it means the world to us to be invited into everybody's homes every evening. It's a responsibility that we do not take lightly, and it also is very meaningful, especially recently when we have had people come up and thank us for the job that we do. It is an honor to tell the stories in our community, and it's an honor to support so many community events. I know we have the Rescue Run coming up, Thanksgiving weekend for the Topeka Rescue Mission. You'll be involved with the Sheltered Living, Festival of Trees, and so many other events and great organizations. And I know it's just an honor to me personally to be involved in them.
Brendan and everybody, there's a little bit of history right now. This is the first time Melissa Bruner and I had been together on another channel at 6 o'clock. That's never happened before. So, and I just can't think of another station that is so tightly woven into the fabric of its town as this station is. It's such an honor to be here, and just a very wonderful gesture. Thank you, Mayor De La Isla and Brendan, for this honor and the proclamation from the council, and just to the hugs that we've received from Topekans. I think most everybody in town knows about the anniversary this week. For them to give that love back to us, and we love serving you, and it's been an honor and a pleasure. And Roger?
Well, you should never follow two professional broadcasters. Just look at first. But thank you for this honor. We appreciate it. As echoed in their statements, we really love being involved in the community, and thank you much.
Brendan, thank you.
So I will share one quick fun story about them. It's been fascinating to watch how WIBW has evolved over the years. When they started, it was just television. And the other morning, I woke up and asked my Amazon Alexa to tell me the news. And rather than the machine reading off the headlines from WIBW, Melissa Bruner, out of nowhere, started reading it to me. So it's fascinating to see how they have evolved over time and continue to serve our community. Next up is Global Entrepreneurship Week. If you all would join me up here, please. I'm particularly excited about this, is both my wife and I are entrepreneurs in Topeka. Fantastic. The more the merrier. I don't know what the record for people on this stage is, but let me tell you, just in my short time here, we have crammed quite a number of folks up here, so. Oh dear. Okay, here we go. Whereas Global Entrepreneurship Week was created in 2007 to celebrate the innovators and job creators who launch startups that bring ideas to life, drive economic growth, and expand human welfare. And Topeka, Kansas affirms to inspire people everywhere through local, national, and global activities designed to help them explore their potential as self-starters and innovators. And numerous organizations in Topeka and Shawnee County work with constituents to bring forth the ideas of entrepreneurship, business, creativity, and the week of November 10th through 18th, 2018 celebrates the 11th annual Global Entrepreneurship Week. So, therefore, I, on the behalf of Michelle De La Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do hereby proclaim the week of November 10th through 18th, 2018 as Global Entrepreneurship Week in Topeka. Yay. Congratulations, everybody.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Hooray. Thank you all. Thank you. My pleasure. It's always fun to get to celebrate exciting things that are going on in our community. With that, we have two presentations. Mr. City Manager, if you'd like to introduce the first one.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Our first one is our Interim Administrative and Financial Services Director, Nick.
right. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. Tonight I'm going to be giving you a brief overview of the third quarter report for 2018. Going to highlight a couple of revenue and expenditure highlights, and then also give a brief preview of 2019 and 2020 and how we're looking there. So first on the revenue side, overall revenues remain flat, but we are seeing a bump of about 2.2% so far in the general fund. That's primarily due to sales tax, which is the largest single source of revenue in the fund, as well as franchise fees, and that's primarily due to hot summer, cold, extended winter that we've had this year so far. Water, wastewater, and stormwater fees are up primarily due to rates and also weather as well. And then finally on special highway, our motor fuel fund, revenues are trending up slightly over 2017, which is a reversal from previous years. On the expenditure side, total expenses are up 2%, with higher increases in water, and that's due to the high number of main breaks that we've seen this year. The general fund is up 3%, with personnel expenses being the primary driver. Those are up 5% over 2017 so far. In previous years, we used this time of year to look at potential excess revenue or revenues over expenditures, and then we come with a proposal on how to use those funds per the excess funds policy. This year, we do not plan on bringing that ordinance forward. We look at coming in just about flat, and in 2019, we're looking at a similar situation where we'll need some potential adjustments on the expenditure side to come in flat, but they're manageable at this point. 2020 is where really that trend that we've talked about in previous years, every February we come up and talk about budget priorities and challenges ahead, and we talk about the different challenges, deferred maintenance, personnel growth. 2020 is where we really start to see that kind of shift start to take its toll and really exceed our revenue expectations. And so while every year we strive to come forth with a balanced budget during proposed budget time, and we will plan to do that again for 2020. This time it's looking like it's going to be requiring more adjustments than necessary, and not the small ones that we have been giving. But I want to give that a preview. That's going to be a continuing theme, at least on the general fund side and a couple of our other funds. That's going to be a continuing theme that we'll talk about over the next several months, and we'll be bringing about different options on how to deal with that. But just wanted to preview that with you tonight as we talk about the third quarter. So with that, the third quarter report is available online. I also encourage you to explore all of our open portals that provide additional financial information on the city. And thank you for the time to be able to present.
Other questions for Mr. Hawken? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Planning quarterly report, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. Planning Director Finder will be giving his third quarter report.
Good evening, governing body. Pleased to present to you our third quarter report for Development and Growth Management from the Planning Department. You will notice from our last quarterly report that trends shouldn't have changed a whole lot. So we'll go over those real quickly. We'll also hit on some of the top permits that were issued in the third quarter, and then I have a tool to show you that we've started using for our building permits that's accessible to the public online. Okay, our permits are ticking up 3 to 4% from last year overall. The one thing you'll see as we go on here, that it's the type of permit that is causing that increase, that slight increase, is not the one that is necessarily the most highly valued or has the most scale to it. In the residential permit area, we are trending up for a number of new units. We're projecting 145 by the end of the year. I'm not sure we'll get there, but that will be we're already beyond the number of units we had this year that we had in 2017. So we're already ahead. We will finish ahead from 2017. I'm not quite sure we'll hit our 5-year average, which is 137, but it is definitely trending in the right direction from last year. So the big reason we see an uptick in building permits is really here. Our residential additions and alterations have gone up, projected to go up about 31% from last year, which is an 11% increase over the last 5 years. Again, these are the sort of things that are not going to have the most value, the most square footage, and so when you see that we're doing overall more in permits, it's largely because of this category, which is good. When you look at the new units that are being created in Shawnee County, we also look at where those are being created. This is trending upwards. 52% of all units created in the county happened in the city so far this year. That is higher than we've had in the last year or our last 5-year average. This would be the highest it would be in the last 5 years. So we'll see what comes in the last quarter. Usually we don't get a lot of residential coming in the last quarter with winter coming on, but we'll see. That's fooled us before. Likewise, this hasn't changed a lot since second quarter. We still are at about a little bit over 10 years worth of single family and 2-family platted lot development, or platted lot inventory, I should say, since 1970. So that hasn't changed much. When you jump into the commercial side of things, we start to see some arrows going down. Again, remember we had a peak year last year. So last year compared to this year, we are at about 17% down overall in commercial permits. But that is not quite as bad when you look at our 5-year average, which is only 3 to 4% off that mark. Now you can see here by the trending on the blue line on the graph is residential. The red line on the graph is commercial. You can see traditionally there has been that sort of that gap between residential and commercial that was basically closed last year, where the blue line and the red line meets. That was last year. So we're trending backwards to kind of where we were before before 2017. Again, the types of permits that we're seeing, they're not going to result in large square footages, so we see quite a sizable drop in our square footage for building permits. Probably the lowest we would project since 2013, and about a 64% drop since last year. In value, we're projecting a little bit over $100 million in permit value this coming year. That happens to be, again, off of our peak from last year, which is about 30% less from last year and 20% over our 5-year average. It's still not quite nearly, it's still as high as we had since 2013 coming off the recession, so it is still higher than those post-recession values, and I would expect this to probably go up a little bit before I see you again next time. In terms of types of permits that were issued in the third quarter, I'll just run through some pictures here and just illustrate. Our highest valued permit was Brewster Place, the Cultural Arts Building. That is being developed now as a $10 million project valued under our permit. This is pretty exciting as you get closer to realize this could be for you. A lot of stuff going on here. Besides a 180 space parking garage, we've got a 2-story greenhouse. We've got a 266 seat performing arts, cultural arts center. Wow. We have an exercise pool and full service spa. A 1,500 production kitchen for private events, and as well as the events there, and an art gallery. So we have a lot going on in that building. It's an incredible new asset to our community, and hopefully that will be closed up before the end of next year. It just broke ground here in the fall. The next highest is Bishop Professional Development Center, USD 501, is repurposing Maud Bishop Elementary School to a professional development center. They did consolidate this school with the Jardine campus. And so not a whole lot of changes from the building standpoint, but the neighborhood, and we met with them on this, we'll see a change to the site. This is a fairly large 13-acre site with a lot of green space. So a parking lot, more parking will be necessary to accommodate the large numbers that come in here for professional development and workshops for the employees of 501. Modern Day Church Parish Hall is finally getting started after years of fundraising and meeting in the basement of the Modern Day School. So this is at 10th and Clay. Another one is Bajillion Agency, the marketing firm, will be moving its headquarters from Southwest Topeka to southeast corner of First and Kansas. So this is very exciting indeed. This is a renovation of an existing building. And last but not least, we Councilwoman Ortiz and I both braved the weather last week to be there for the groundbreaking for Ybarra Place duplexes. They're building 7 duplexes at 11th and Golden. This is across from where Pine Ridge housing complex is. So there's already, I believe, 12, 14 duplexes there. So this is really doubling in size, this development. It's affordable housing and is being built by THA Inc. So another great asset over there in East Topeka. I'm going to bring up a online tool here before we close up. One of the things we get a lot of is people call the city, email, and want to know what's going in here. I see people breaking ground. What the heck is going on there? So we started an online building permit map with the help of our public works group to basically search any length of time between residential and commercial building permits. On the map here, the red dots would be commercial. The whatever that color, that'd be green or yellow, would be the residential building permits. And you can go and just click on one of these. I've clicked on Wolf's Tenant Finish at 2100 Westport Drive, and basically that's the old Trampo laser rock thing. Yes. So Wolf's is I believe a dog daycare, and they are refinishing that place. The building permit was initiated in July 13th, and you can see it was issued in August 29th. And so that is under construction now. So that gives you you can just hover around and look at any of these dots on here and be able to tell what was being done. Here's one for the library courtyard that's going in, a footing and foundation. And if you want to go back farther, this defaults to 90 days in the past. If you want to go back farther, there's a filter up here, and I'll just go down to the bottom for commercial. And if I want to look up the last year, and I put in 360, oops, sorry. I put in 365, there we go. Days, then it'll repopulate the map and show all the building permits for that date, for that time range. And so you can put any calendar date you want in, and if you want to go back in time and look at this, but we only show those permits that have been issued. And believe it or not, we do approve permits that don't get issued. People don't come pick them up. They don't. carry through on their plans, but for those that are issued, and if there's further interest in questioning anything more about the project, they can contact our department. So that's just Google building permit map, Topeka, you'd find it. It's also under our Topeka planning webpage under resources. So with that, I'll thank you for your time. That's our third quarter report.
Excellent. That's a fantastic tool. I love that because I get questions all the time. What's going in here or there? So this is great. Are there questions for Mr. Feinder? Yes, sir.
Just real quick, Bill, that's a really, I really like this, the Brewster. How big a building is that? How many square feet is that roughly?
On which one?
On the Brewster Place addition?
Square footage wise, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Any idea? No idea.
No, I do not. Because that includes the parking garage, and so we'd have to go back and break out the parking garage if I had the overall square footage, but I can get that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Phil, when somebody is renovating, does that show as well?
Yes, it would. If you get a permit for a residential alteration or you're adding a deck. I don't know that, I think we've tried to put up not every permit, like we won't put up, somebody's putting in a hot water heater or they need an electrical permit. You'll see all the building permits. So yes, a deck or a addition or a renovation of the house would show.
And commercial as well?
And commercial as well, yes.
Okay, so, like, if somebody bought something like let's say Harold's Tires, when they bought in North Topeka, that would have showed everything?
Yeah, Harold's Tires is if they've been issued a permit, then it would show on here, depending on how far back, you want to search, for sure.
But it doesn't really show does it show if they're renovating or they're newly, just moving in? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, if they need to renovate, or let's say I got a building and I just partially needed to renovate. Does it show all of that?
It would show if we issued you a permit.
Only if you issued a permit?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Claire?
So if my neighbor is adding on to their house, and they're not on that list,
Another reason we might use it as a tool. So if you have a question that's not on here, give us a call, and it may be like we don't have every permit on here. So, but if it's something sizable and significant, it should be on there. Okay.
Oh, dear. Other questions for Mr. Finder? Oh, Ms. Heller.
It's not really a question, but I liked to look at that map and see how dispersed throughout our entire city those permits were. That really speaks well to a lot of good things happening, I think.
It's an excellent indicator for economic success in the town. I agree. So, other questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Next up, roll call. The clerk
Deputy
will
Mayor
call.
Jensen.
Present.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Clear.
here,
Ortiz.
Here.
Emerson.
Here.
Padilla.
Here.
Mays.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
And Lester.
Here.
Appointments, if the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Barbara Brudeau to the Topeka Board of Zoning Appeals to fill a 3-year term ending December 1, 2021. B is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Lisa Stubbs to the Metropolitan Topeka Airport Authority Board for a 3-year term ending December 1, 2021. C is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Sharon Bedoya to the Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending August 17, 2019. D is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Angel Zimmerman to the Downtown Business Improvement District Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending November 1, 2020. E is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Jeff Carson to the Downtown Business Improvement District Advisory Board to fill an unexpired term ending October 1, 2020. F is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Michael Wilson to the Downtown Business Improvement District Advisory Board to fill an unexpired term ending October 1, 2020. G is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Vince Fry to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for a term ending January 1, 2021.
Is there a motion? Is there a second? Fantastic. Before we vote, I will just comment, I think it is fantastic that there are so many people on this agenda that have agreed to help make our community better. The fact that we have folks that really want to get involved and help, that is just an incredible feat, I think. So, with that, please vote yes or no. Oh, I'm sorry. I had a comment.
Is this mine?
Oh, that's interesting.
Do I get to vote?
Yes.
Oh, I see, okay.
Is that better?
Mayor, does he want serving as deputy mayor? Okay.
What?
Okay. All right. And Mr. Cohen?
Did we all vote on the right machine?
Mr. Cohen? I declare the board. Yeah.
Array technology.
All right, we have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, you all are approved. Barbara, Lisa, Sharon, Angel, Jeff, Michael, and Vince, if you all are here, if you would please stand to be recognized. Thank you all again for being willing to help the community. It's really fantastic. We appreciate the help. On to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout naming banks and savings institutions that are designated as depositories for all City of Topeka accounts and authorizing signatories and rescinding City of Topeka Resolution Number 8959. B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning the City of Topeka's participation in the State of Kansas Municipal Investment Pool and rescinding City of Topeka Resolution Number 8960. C are minutes of the regular meeting of October 23, 2018, and there are no applications.
That's the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the motion is approved. On to action items. The clerk would read item A.
A is authorizing a public hearing for December 4, 2018 for the purpose of hearing and answering objections of taxpayers relating to the proposed amendments to the 2018 operating budget.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Nick Hawkins, our interim director, will make our presentation relating to the budget amendments.
Welcome back, Mr. Hawkins.
Yes, good evening again. So at this time of year, we look at, when we're going through our third quarter projections, we look at what funds look like they might be coming close to their budget authority, or if we're receiving revenue higher than we anticipated in the year. And this year, we've identified 5 funds that we are requesting additional budget authority for. And so tonight sets the public hearing. This is similar to the budget process that we do every year. So we set the public hearing, and then have the public hearing, and then consider it for action the next week. So this sets a December 4th public hearing and December 11th for action. Tonight we have 5 funds. The first is the Tax Increment Financing Fund, and currently we have one TIF district, and that is College Hill. And we actually had an amendment last year for this where revenue was coming in higher. So we're proposing moving the budget from $190,000 to $250,000 to cover any of that excess revenue. In the 2019 budget, we actually have kind of adjusted for that, and we've budgeted at that $250,000 number, but requesting an amendment for that. Second is the Special Alcohol Fund, which would come from the existing cash balance in the fund. This is generated from the liquor sales tax, or the liquor tax, and is allocated per recommendations by the Topeka-Shawnee County Alcohol Drug Abuse Advisory Council. And we're needing an amendment for that because there were some previous year encumbrances that will hit the books in 2018. So we do have a cash balance that will cover those expenses. Third is the Law Enforcement Fund, and there are a couple of different projects that are going on here that will cause us to exceed budget authority by about $23,000. Fourth is the Southeast 29th Community Improvement District. This was approved by council after we adopted the 2018 budget, and so we're receiving revenues from that district, and you just need to have a budget authority. So if the developers want to request reimbursement this year, we can pay them. And then fifth is the Information Technology Fund, and this is a bit of an odd one. Don't necessarily know if they, and don't think that they'll get to their budget authority this year. But it's an internal service fund, and for every other internal service fund, we do budget a contingency on an annual basis. There are a couple different items this year that were not anticipated in the budget. Primarily, we have additional police vehicles that we purchased this year to kind of take advantage of a contract that we had, and with that, there's equipment that we need to add on to that that comes from the IT fund that will bring them close to their budget authority this year. But this is really just kind of a precautionary move, and adding that $300,000, I do not anticipate for a second they'll actually reach that, but want to take a precaution with that fund, and so recommending that we just do one, and that $300,000 would be about what we would budget for a contingency in that internal service fund. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Hawkins? Yes, sir.
I'm not really sure. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm not really sure how I don't remember how the old doing the funds is. And I mean, does this mean that we then authorize that department or the fund person that runs that fund to spend that money before the end of the year?
It gives them the authority, but we monitor closely, and we've had meetings with every department this year within the last couple of weeks, and we asked them, are there any additional expenses that you expect to incur? And even though this gives them the authority, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll spend it.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I don't have questions of Nick per se. I've had some questions and have asked back and forth in the course of the week. I'm just not quite sure. In simple terms, I realize that this motion that we have in front of us is just to set items for a public hearing. But with both the law enforcement fund, so I have some we've never really considered the perimeter fence, and my understanding is there could be some reconsideration of that one, and also the IT fund. I have a real problem with allocating another $300,000, even putting it on for a public hearing on December 11th to an entity that's balanced just fine and might need it before the end of the month. And it looks like even for the police cars, those computers aren't ordered yet, so they would not arrive until January anyway. That's the only big ticket staff has been able to talk about. So in whatever way it's appropriate, I'd like to just have the three, the tax increment financing one, the special alcohol, and the Southeast 29th SID proposal go forward for the hearings, but not the other two.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only authority we have here is to set the public hearing, not to set what's discussed at it.
I would think that's what we're doing.
No, ma'am, it's just to set the public hearing, not the context.
The discussion will be on setting the hearing. That is what we're doing. These are the items that would be included in the resolution that would be considered for the budget amendments. And so at that point, we'll bring forward. Yes, I've had discussions with the police chief, and he's looking at the possibility of removing the fence and doing it in a different way. He's verifying some things. We already have an existing bid. We're trying to look at the legalities regarding that bid and the process that we need to do if we weren't to accept. We haven't signed the contract yet, so that is a possibility that we would not move forward with it and we would retool the project. So we haven't got all of that specifically ended as far as the possibilities. And, with the Information Technology Fund, I feel that is a contingency. It is a separate fund. It would be a bigger concern to me if this was the general fund that we were talking about. In other words, giving an authorization for $300,000 additionally out of the general fund, given the status of that fund. But this is internal. If the money isn't spent, it stays right within that fund. It isn't moved. And so all we're doing is giving us the flexibility that if we can get, for example, those computers and get those installed and purchased, and then something else occurred within IT, a server issue, who knows what, that required an additional expenditure, it wouldn't cause us to be over and end up being a blemish on an audit that otherwise would not have occurred. And so for me, I think it's important for us to consider going ahead and looking at that as an amendment to the budget. I don't know if, Nick, you have any additional thoughts related to that?
No, I think, if, we get to December 11th and there are concerns, similar to the budget process, you can do an amendment and drop some funds or add.
Because all we're doing tonight is setting the public the public hearing. Thank you.
That's correct.
Other comments, questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. What I heard, though, was a question being asked if she wanted to amend it to pull those two things off of there, whether that was possible or not, and I've not heard an answer on that.
Ms. Robertson?
I think at this point in time, we're setting the public hearing, but between now and the 4th, there could be discussion about whether we pull it so that when the public considers it, or if the body wants to do it now, you can do it now, I suppose. To consider those bonds.
So what you're proposing, though, is to not discuss those items at all?
I think if this, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Doug's indicated that we probably should leave them if we're going to discuss them this evening, because if they're in here, then they need to be in here as we submit it to the public.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I guess you'll have to go through each one of them and talk about it. That's correct, Councilmember Hiller.
Well, we would need to add an item to the agenda then, would we not?
No.
To discuss
Well, I
each
mean,
individual item
either that or
that would
push
be
back the
within.
public hearing date. But if you keep it,
This has not been
no,
advertised.
we'll
and-
set
Yeah.
it for advertising
Yeah.
next,
Yeah, it would be next
on the
Monday.
30th.
It would be in the Topeka Metro News.
Mr. Mays.
Yeah. You'd have to bump it back.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Councilwoman Hiller, isn't the point of what you're saying is to not have the public hearing on these two items?
If I may, yes, I think, if I don't like to have an item that we invite the public to spend time on, and we all spend a lot of time on it as well when people ask us questions or they have concerns or whatever. So I just felt strongly enough about the two of those that I didn't want them to even go forward for the hearing.
So, Ms. Robertson, if we killed those now, then there would not be any discussion at all. Oh, sorry. If we pull them out of so if we pull these out of the public hearing, then we can't discuss or take action on them at all,
We're talking
correct?
about some time frames here, so we just want to make sure we have enough time to do it before the
Okay.
end of the year, so.
Ms. Clear.
So if we pull them now and want to add them later, do we have to have another public meeting?
That would be my understanding. Yeah, we can't discuss them unless we have a public hearing,
Just leave
correct?
them on there and let them discuss it. and then-
Okay. Yes, sir.
If I may, I think, at least I'm in agreement with Councilwoman Hiller's point, that is, if you don't want to consider them, you need to pull them now. But it seems to me that the cleanest would be to consider them at the public hearing, take input from yourselves and from the public. I mean, that's the entire point of it. And certainly that's how we've traditionally operated. Doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way, and I understand your point about putting work in, but certainly that's the underlying intent of a public hearing, is to take that input.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to defer this for, let's see, to the first meeting in December. I'd like to hear what the chief comes back with on that proposal, if he needs it. It sounds like we're still questionable about that, and that'll give us time to study the other thing. So I'd like to defer it to the first week in December, the first meeting in December.
Is there a second? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a question about the timing. If we defer it, we have to give 2 weeks' notice for a public hearing, correct?
We can't do it.
We need to calendar it, and there's not enough.
We can't defer this?
Well, there's not enough time left in the year.
With the notice.
You have to publish it. And with the notice requirement, it would be too tight of a time frame.
Can it be done?
If you did it on, if you move this to December 4th, that would be we'd publish it in the Metro News on the 10th, I believe. And then you'd have to allow 10 days after that, which would be the 20th, which would be after the final meeting in December.
So when is, if I may, Deputy Mayor, when is the deadline? I mean, you guys are talking about deadline. I think it'd be really helpful if when you guys are talking, if you would talk out loud so we can also hear it, but
I understand,
when is the
Councilwoman.
deadline that we're looking at?
We're trying to communicate amongst ourselves to make sure we give you a
Okay,
proper
can
answer.
we just take a break then, Deputy Mayor, till they can find that out?
Well, so what we're discussing is to set a public hearing to discuss this. We're not setting, or not making a determination now whether or not to approve these. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yes.
all we're doing is setting the conversation period to have for this. So we're not making a judgment call to vote for or against something. So I guess I'm not quite understanding why we want to pull things now, given that all we're doing is telling the public when we want to talk about them.
Well, I think Councilwoman Hiller doesn't want to discuss them if there's no need to. And so I've heard we may not need the fence, so if we don't need to, I agree, let's just not study them. So that's what's trying to defer it.
For 1 week, maybe meet next week. Have an answer definitively on the other issues, right? We should be able to get that answer this week.
You could do it by
Yeah,
defer next week, publish 10 days, 12/6.
so then we would be able to
You'd have
have
to
it
hear
the
it
second
on
meeting
the
in
10th.
December. Okay, so, yeah, the dates would work out. We could just delay 1 week. I think we can still meet the timelines.
Make a
that
motion
are-
to defer 1 week, and so they can come back to see.
Okay, there's a motion to defer and a second. All those in favor?
Who was the second on that?
Mr. Emerson?
Henderson.
So, discussion? Okay. Other comments? My question is, so even if we put these on the agenda, we can still say, we've determined we don't need to do anything and drop them right there. We don't have to vote on every single item, do we? Okay.
Each of these initially, the 5?
Right, so if at the public comment, or at the public hearing, if we've determined by that time we don't have to take any action, we don't have to bring them forward as ordinances, is that correct?
No, this is one document.
Comes forward as one document. If you would amend it,
You
Okay.
could pull one off.
you could pull one off. You could
Well,
make a
but
motion
we're not going to do
eliminate.
that at the public hearing, though, are we?
When you would approve the resolution after the public hearing,
okay.
you would do that.
Okay.
If you were to determine after the public hearing that there wasn't a desire
we
to
would need
do
to
a
amend it
particular
at that
one,
time
you would
then.
amend it at that time.
Okay.
Which had we approved moving forward tonight would still have been possible in.
So basically, we're going to have to determine whether or not, whether you're determining essentially tonight or within 1 week that we're going to talk about two things,
Correct.
or we'll determine then whether we're going to talk about two things anyway.
Correct.
So, okay, all we're doing is pushing
All
the
we're doing
can
is
down the
deferring
road, it
1
sounds
week.
like. Okay, other comments? Yes, sir?
Just a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Are we deferring, study the public?
Correct.
That's what we're
That's the motion on the floor at this time.
not comment.
Correct. Other questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
The motion fails. We have 5 yes, we have clear,
Padilla, Mays, and Deputy Mayor voting no.
Okay, the motion to defer has failed, so the item is still before us. Is there a motion to approve? Yes, ma'am.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Okay. We have a motion to approve and a second. Is there discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. Or abstain.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the motion is approved. The public meeting is set. Item B, if the clerk could read.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brett Trout amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinance by Section 1850-050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at 1329 Southwest Woodall Street from R1 Residential District to ONI2 Office and Institutional District.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Director Finder will go through this and the next 2 items and discuss them for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. As stated, the first zoning proposal before you is at 1329 Southwest Woodhall, involving Gage Center Dental Group. The proposal would change zoning on a adjacent piece of property, which is currently zoned single family. It's a house, has been used as a house. It's kind of wedged between the office zoning to the north, some apartments to the south, and then the Gage Shopping Center to the east. So what this would do is rezone it to office and institutional to allow Gage Dental Group a parking lot expansion for their business and for the building. Staff and Planning Commission recommended approval. There was one dissenting vote on the Planning Commission. They were concerned that this would cause too much, or there already is enough surface parking, off-street parking in the area. You can kind of see with Gage Shopping Center across Woodhall, but staff and the commission did not feel that was a viable or feasible alternative to having something that's adjacent to the business, removes some of the cars from the street, as well as prevents people from walking across street, which we would probably be getting calls about, a pedestrian light. So having it next there made a lot more sense, and the zoning, of course, is something that is very compatible with what's around there now. So with that, we would recommend approval of the ordinance.
Are there questions for Mr. Finder? Ms. Claire.
Make sure I'm remembering the right one. So this is there now, the dental group is there now, which is that building right next to the property?
Yeah, well, it's the big,
It's the
big
square black one?
Yeah, it's the big square right here.
And that parking in front, they're saying, so that's not enough?
So right, the parking on all, basically on all sides, is not enough to also add more dentist practices there as
Okay.
well.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Other questions? Okay, is there a motion? Ms. Claire, is there a
Motion to
second?
approve.
I'll second.
Okay. So it's ex parte time again.
Looking for a script.
Yes, oh, here it is. Prior to proceeding with a vote, each member of the governing body who has engaged in ex parte communication with any individual, either in favor or against the matter being considered, must state that this communication occurred and indicate that even in light of having engaged in this communication, you are able to fairly, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based upon the evidence provided on the record. The record includes the Planning Commission minutes, the staff reports, its attachments, the public records made during the Planning Commission hearing, and similar relevant information related to the matter. This declaration is required due to the fact that the governing body is acting in a quasi-judicial role making this decision and must demonstrate that appropriate due process has been afforded. Has anyone received a communication about this? Well, if anybody has raised their hand, and then we'll... No communication? Okay. With that said, please vote yes or no. Yes, we have a motion and a second.
Okay, we have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the motion is adopted. On to item C. Mr. City Manager, or I'm sorry, if the clerk would read.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850-050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes on zoning on property located at 121 and 125 North Kansas Avenue from I-2 Heavy Industrial District to D3 Downtown District.
Mr. City Manager.
Yes, the Director Finder will go through this item on the agenda, explain it to us.
Welcome back.
Thank you again. This next proposal is at the corner of First and Kansas, the northwest corner. This is what we refer to as the Mill Block. This is a historic district. And the current zoning on that block is, half of it is D3 and the other half is I2. D3 is a downtown mixed-use district. I2 is heavy industrial. So what these property owners have, actually one of them has already converted some of the building. One of these properties is the one closest to the D3 now for 3 apartment units. And so this change in zoning would make them be in conformance. The next property to the north there is not proposing at this point any residential, but is in support of the change so that they could potentially do that in the future as well. There has not, so staff and planning commission both had recommended approval on this. There was no dissenting votes. We did get, at our neighborhood meeting, we did get one property owner in the area raising some concern of introducing residential into this area. And as most of you know, we have a brand new 33 loft units going in. There's been another unit converted. So this block has already been introduced into the area for residential. Do not see a concern here as well. So with your, without any objection, I would recommend approval of the ordinance.
Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Finder? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I thought it was already residential because of the loft. So is the loft the middle one then, right there?
Yes. So that's,
So don't we have residential? Okay.
Correct, yes, the first 3, there's 3 properties below the rezoning properties. Those all have some residential aspect to them.
What do you mean some?
They're not purely, they may not all be completely 100% residential. There may be some retail, there may be some storage, but they do have some residential aspect.
So you can have more than one, is what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
okay.
And that's what the D3, that purple zoning is a mixed use. It allows residential and retail and office as well.
So this is all going to be residential, then we don't want to continue the mixed use, is that correct?
We do want to continue the mixed use to allow residential to happen in this block. So we want to continue the trend, which is residential on this block. And as I mentioned, one of the owners had already been approved for 3 units before this. So this will certainly be in keeping with that.
Okay, I'm way confused. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Is there a motion?
Do we need ex parte first?
Well, now you have to do the motion first, then we have to do ex parte. Ms. Hiller, is there a second?
Second.
And
Okay.
I had just a quick
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry.
With a great deal of pride, this is in District 1, it's downtown. One of the lofts was on the loft tour 2 weeks ago, it's awesome. So it's a really great development, and I think the D3 is actually a correction because they didn't know they needed that zoning when they got started, as I understand it. So getting that building corrected and having the other one ready to go for whatever is very timely, and they're doing great.
Fantastic. Okay. With that, ex parte time. Prior to proceeding with the vote, each member of the governing body was engaged in ex parte communication with an individual, either in favor or against. This matter being considered must state this communication occurred and indicate that even in the light of having engaged in this communication, you are able to freely, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based solely on the evidence provided on the record. This record includes the planning commission minutes, the staff reports as attachments, public comments made to the planning commission hearing, and similar related information related to the matter. This declaration is required to the fact that the governing body is acting in a quasi-judicial role, making this decision, and must demonstrate the appropriate due process has been afforded. Anybody who has ex parte communication, if you would raise your hand and declare it now. And yes, ma'am?
I've been over there, met them. We didn't even really talk about the zoning, though. It was just a great tour.
Fantastic.
I spoke to a couple people about it.
Okay. I have not had any myself, so with that, those in favor, please vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the motion is adopted. On to item D, I believe it is. Yes, item D.